might be in jeopardy tonight. Mike Wheeler's streak
Wheeler dealer
just might have his hands full. And that's with anybody there.
Yep.
But just watching that car on the track for the first time, as good as it was, I immediately took notice of the white and orange 1K of Kendrick Cox.
But, just to come down there for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm
saying.
saying.
Come out and do that good. Poof.
That's what caught my attention because we've seen some fast guys there all year long. Hadn't seen Kendrick Cox yet, and he showed up and was like he'd been there all year.
I think he had his notebook.
Oh, he was
deep in that notebook.
I'll tell you, if you remember who you talked to in that trailer when we were down there talking with him, there's a lot of knowledge on that pit crew. And there's a veteran crew down there, and those guys are winners. That's when you got that kind of knowledge from you, you better be. It's all in your hands because the knowledge is there to make the car good. You better have a driver that can wheel and deal that night, and he was.
In sprint cars, the driver just shuts up and let the crew do the talking for you. They set the car up. You just drive it.
You have to. You have to drive it.
You
have to drive it. Yeah, he actually, like you said, surprise visit. And
he's been doing pretty good at Cottage Grove, too, I think.
Yeah, he has. He's got a win or two down there this year. He's got the $1,000 payday Saturday. 15 sprint cars on hand. Okay.
I was gonna post that maybe either today or tomorrow when I get a chance if I'm not making sawdust.
Building a house for someone.
Yeah, if I'm not building a house, Kinzer asked me if I would post that race, so I may just post the sprint car race.
That was a great race.
I know it was.
It was a great race.
Very good race.
And we're going to talk about this, and that's why I saved this one for last, was because of what happened in the closing laps. Mike McCann, I got to tell you this story because when you're focused, doing your thing, that's where I'm at. Okay, I'm watching front to back. You got to watch the race much like a flagman, but you got to go where the action is too, and you got to, especially with sprint cars, it's hard because you got to move your head so much. So I'm up there, I'm announcing the sprint cars, and you forget when you get into a race that's really starting to get good. I do sometimes. There's people around me, okay? Like I've said on the show before, chairs have been known to fly as I stand up and they bounce off walls. I've actually cut my leg doing that.
Actually, people, he's tap dancing up there.
So here's the funny thing. This race got really, really exciting here in the closing laps. We're going to talk about that, but before we get to there, we wrap up. We're doing our thing. You guys are breaking everything down. I'm doing the interviews. Talk to everybody. I come back up, and as we're walking towards the car, Sandy comes up to me, and she has this look on her face, and I thought, what'd I do? She smiles, and she looks at me and says, Mike McCann was in that booth tonight while you were announcing, right? I said, I didn't know you were there. I was just...
You were in a zone.
I was, and I got to thinking on the way home, I wonder if Mike regrets bringing me in. I get a little animated. I get into it, man. I'm a fan. I had no idea Mike was there, and you forget that, and I get a little excited.
Well, you're up there bouncing off rev limiter as you're going.
I just step out of the way, and he's going back and forth and, screaming like a little girl, and I was like, wow.
I can hear when his motor changed tune.
Yes, yes.
When it goes from just kind of medium horsepower
just
to wide open throttle,
And that happened. I can hear it. That happened. But it's because of what goes on in the track.
Right. Well, at least the chairs don't fly in this booth because the booth is really big.
They've taken chairs out.
I've had chairs fly at me by complete accident. But when he jumps up and his legs hit the chair and the chair flies back and you just feel like you're in a tornado.
Do you notice whenever I go up in the booth, like especially when we get there, I fold up the chairs and I take the stools and I shove them underneath.
You know what?
I have done that as well.
He does.
You push them underneath so they don't get pushed over.
Thank God, because this race put on so much action. I was there. I was on the chip, as you want to say, the rev limiter. I think I probably would have been in Mark Wogge's condition,
yeah, he would have blown him over.
Had it gone any farther, 4 or 5 more laps, I probably would have left in an ambulance. It was that
well,
good, right?
I will tell you that Nicole kept looking over going, what is wrong with this guy? The look on
Yeah,
her face
because all you guys have
like,
is a sliding glass door between you.
Yeah, and it's open.
and it's open. Or
And
it
she's
gets
the
too hot.
scorekeeper,
Yeah.
right?
And she's listening to him, and she looks over. She's like, oh.
Oh, you guys don't have it. You don't know nothing. Be up there where me and Dave's at.
Uh-huh.
We're right up under those
Oh,
huge
my gosh.
horn
I
speakers.
couldn't even
and
imagine
Dave will
Ed.
look over at me and go,
Yeah. Yeah. I bet it gets a little loud up there, doesn't
"Oh, it does. It does."
Yikes.
There's been nights I've heard him over the engines on turn 3 in the pits.
Oh, my goodness.
That's when the fan starts coming out. You know the
Yeah.
racing's good if I get to that level.
And the
but-
fans get with it.
Oh, yeah.
They get with it.
They
Oh,
do.
man.
And I can hear the cheering
Yeah.
when that happens.
And
because
that-
it
boy,
amps
there was
everybody
some-
up. There
the-
was a lot of cheering.
crowd was
There
phenomenal.
was. They-
And if you didn't go to Moxie Mean Promotion and check out the page, go to Moxie Love Photography and look at the Nina's shots from the crowd. I mean, there's fans
You know
leaning over the
what?
rail, pointing and cheering. And,
I
mean,
will tell you, those shots were probably the best shots I've ever seen.
And it wasn't even
were the
have race
shots
cars.
of the fans.
Yeah.
Was that not the most beautiful thing to see people excited, the looks on their faces, pointing, cheering? I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
I was
I
so
am
excited
glad
to
I
see
didn't
that.
spend 100% of my night in the pits that night.
You know,
Yeah.
Because I got to
yes.
experience something that was really special for one. For two, I got to be a fan for the most
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to do a lot of interaction, do the other things with the, everything else
Mm-hmm.
going on. But it was exciting to see. It reminded me of being a kid
Yes.
Yep.
down at Eugene Speedway,
Yep.
showing up there and seeing the smiles on everybody's faces. Everybody's into it. Everybody's excited. It reminded me of that. It
We had
took
a
me back
packed
to my
house, too.
childhood. Yes.
Yeah.
And then Gary comes up where me and Dave is, and he goes, "Geez, you guys got a really good spot up here."
Yeah.
My spot's better.
No,
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 no.
no.
You're not smelling the race fuel.
Listen.
Yeah.
Listen.
But he's also not getting dirty. And
He's
if
not
you
getting
don't, you
Air
guys,
conditioning.
if you don't know Corey,
Air conditioning.
You know, when the cars go by, especially the sprint cars, and I'm looking at my monitor, and all of a sudden I have to shake my head and
Get the
wipe
dirt
my eyes,
off,
get the
yeah.
dirt out of my eyes, and look back, and I go, "Oh, there it is." You know,
and Corey doesn't like to get dirty. I don't care what he says.
well, you got to get a little dirt, and you'll get dirt
That's
up there.
why I think he likes the booth with the glass and the AC, and he's kind of like a little princess.
Remember about 2
I'm
weeks
clean.
ago
I'm
when you
just
came
clean.
up and you looked at we have 2 tables up there, one
Oh.
for the drone and one for all our electronics and
equipment,
stuff. And I swear they're white
Yes.
tables.
They're
They're-
brown at the end of the night.
Oh,
They're
they was
covered
worse. They're
in
covered.
dirt. Covered.
They're covered. I mean, I go home, take the air compressor, and blow out my cases.
You know, and that's the thing with all those electronics up there. That is tough. I mean, you have to blow that stuff out. It gets crazy up there.
and my
but-
white shirt, my neck.
It is a pretty darn cool view, though.
It is.
You
and
got to
you smell all
that.
that good. And you know, there's somebody, Gary, you're going to have to find out who this is that runs late models. That's either running cotton candy or grape juice. I don't know
That
which.
sweet smell.
Yeah, I don't know which one they're running.
What?
Yeah, it's called fuel fragrance. And somebody's either running
That's a
grape
thing?
juice or cotton candy. You need to come over to my house and open up my airplane trailer
And smell?
and just smell. Mine's cotton candy and bubble gum.
I'll have to wait till my cold's done, but I'll come
you'd
over and
smell it
smell
even
your
without
trailer.
that. Even without
Really?
that.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh no, it's
Interesting.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of guys. The drag racers run it, but
Oh, okay.
it just smells good. You can smell it. They go by and I go,
You know what? I just like that good old race fuel smell.
Oh, I do
and those
too.
sounds of those engines. Gosh, it makes me want to go out in the barn and start that car.
and alcohol,
Alcohol
smells
smells
different.
good. Yeah.
Does it?
Oh yeah,
Well, we had plenty of that on the track with,
with all those sprint cars out there.
man, yeah. Kendra Cox, again, going back to the
Yeah, sorry, we went down a rabbit hole.
Yep.
Corey's
Squirrel.
job is to keep us on point.
Oh, that's right.
Kendra Cox. That's hard to do.
We get excited.
Kendra Cox led every lap of that race.
Yeah.
And,
He checked out and never looked back.
well, there was a couple of cautions. Then a couple of guys had a shot at him. They couldn't get it done. And I'm going to just – it was Kendra Cox. It was all Kendra Cox until lap 23. You know, Tanner Holmes was there. You had Dave Hibbard. You had, the names you expect to be there at Southern Oregon Speedway. What happened on lap 23? Because you got to remember, the top 6 cars go 6 laps in the scramble to see who starts where. Well, Kinser won that. Started on the front row, got the green flag, put it up front, never looked back, like you said. Everybody else behind him is slicing and dicing for position. And Wheeler struggled. Wheeler, who had won 3 straight coming in, was the favorite coming in. I mean, clearly the favorite. The first half of the race, just kind of like the first 10 laps, was kind of like, what's going on with the 1W? What? Just couldn't quite get it figured out. Lap 11, he finally started to make some moves. He got to 4th. And from that point on, the 1W figured it out. It was lap 11 is where it all happened.
He got it hooked up.
He did. He figured out his line. He figured out where the car was working best. He had a little bit of room to work with now. It wasn't all packed up in front of him. Developed a rhythm, settled in, and started going to work. And started reeling drivers in and started passing guys. And he got to second. But by the time he got to second, Kinser Cox was so far out, it was kind of like, well, okay, Wheeler's going to get second. And he started reeling him in. And Kinser got to lap traffic. And Wheeler started reeling him in. And Kinser Kinser Cox had all that traffic ahead of him. And that did nothing but benefit Mike Wheeler. Now, they get to lap 23. Coming to the white flag, right? Wheeler dives it in hard into the corner and closed that gap. I mean, Kinser was running the top. Wheeler to the bottom, slid up like he would on a slide job, and came out right on the tail cone of Kinser Cox. They went into turn 1. Wheeler drove right to the bottom, showed some color. Again, lap traffic was there. Kinser had the top line, the momentum. Down the backstretch, they went into turn 3, and lap traffic can be
lap traffic decided that race.
Well, and you're right, and it can be a driver's best friend and a driver's worst nightmare. And we saw all of that work out for Kinser Cox and Mike Wheeler on the last lap out of turn 4 as Cox had the momentum on the top. Wheeler's only shot was to make something happen on the bottom. And down to the bottom, took a run out of turn 4. Lap traffic was right there ahead of the 1W, and it was it a car length? At best.
At best, yeah. I think it's a little closer than that.
Kinser Cox got the win. Wheeler was second. Wheeler almost had 4 in a row, but the patience displayed by Kinser Cox in traffic as the leader was everything Mike Wheeler wasn't. I mean, Wheeler knew, this is it. I got to go. I've got to make these moves. When he knew they were in the closing laps, and did he put on a show the last couple of laps?
Well, I was watching, as Kinser was running the high side, and those slower cars he's coming up on, it looked like they was going to block Cox, and Wheeler was going to get down under him and make it around on the bottom side. But for some reason, those cars kind of dropped down and cut Wheeler off, and Cox had that clear shot on the outside, and Wheeler had to come up around and follow him. But he had to get on the binders to stay off the ones on the bottom.
It was almost a 3-lane track, which makes it a little bit more.
Well, and
technical.
Absolutely, it was.
And everybody's taking as much room as they can.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, when you do the slide job, you take the whole track.
You have
from
to.
the bottom to the top.
You have to.
Because you didn't get on the binders, you got to get rid of that speed somewhere. And hopefully you don't lose too much.
Okay, Roy Bain just hit us on the chat line. He says, my wife pointed that out at one race. Laugh out loud. I want to know what he's talking about. Roy, if you're still listening, hit me on the chat line. I want to know what your wife pointed out. It's probably got something to do with me screaming and yelling and acting like an idiot.
Are they watching you up there?
I hope not. You know what? That's the thing about Southern Oregon is
some of them do.
It's not that high. You can see into there, and I'll tell you, when I'm pacing back and forth and I'm leaning over the desk and I'm going, up and down. I mean,
the only people that cannot see you are the first 7 rows down from you.
Right.
Everybody else in
the
the
people
whole
standing out
grandstand.
the big window off to my right, they're all looking in. I mean, there's times where I'll talk to the crowd and I'll actually look out the windows and they're waving and they're like, yeah, I mean, having a good time. I'm not used to that, where I'm used to being really high where no one can see me. So I start pacing back and forth, like I do, and it feels like I'm walking the length of the front stretch in this booth. as I go back and forth looking out the window and I get all excited. And then I'll look over and there'll be people looking in like, what is he going to have a seizure? I mean,
they're not
crazy.
watching the races. They're
These
watching the
guys,
announcer.
Cox and Wheeler, just about, I mean, we almost got that mission accomplished. I mean, we were almost on